Hello and welcome to the White Deer podcast. Today we're interviewing Mark Wisdom.
Hello.
This is Mark.
Hello, Mark. Yes, Mark Wisdom.
And me and Al are firing some questions over him. This is the third of our kind of introductory podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get going.
Mm.
So how did you get started as an actor?
Well, I think, as most actors would probably say, synchronised drinking there from Adam there. I think, as most actors would probably say, it's in many ways something that you probably started as doing when you were very young. I've always acted in some form throughout like school and through to mainly through school. I was always in like the productions that were coming up and always getting involved with those. I actually didn't do very much during college and uni. However, the few bits of acting I did then were very substantial in terms of getting to where I am now. So definitely big moves there. But yeah, through school, mainly theatre, stage work, really. It was only until I got to uni where I was in a play written by an associate of ours, someone that we know, who had written this play, and he was putting it to the Drama Society, and they were going to perform it for him. I joined that society really late, and I ended up being cast as social media number 2, and I think police officer number 1 or something. So I wasn't really massively involved with it, but I sort of through that got to know the writer, who said that he'd written it as a film as well, and you're more than welcome to audition for it. So I did. I was lucky to get the part in the film version of that play, which turned out to be Through Emerald Eyes, which was technically not my first film, but the one that really told me that this is what I wanted to do as a career, and that it was possible. So then I've sort of transitioned now slightly towards screen-based stuff, because that's what I enjoy. I think it provides the collaboration side of things. But yeah, I've sort of always done it. What I would say now, though, is I'm much more of a filmmaker overall. So I do a little bit of writing, a bit of producing, a bit of directing here and there. But with the acting as being the main focus, for sure.
So you didn't study acting at uni then?
No. And I specifically didn't because I thought, there's 2 reasons. The first reason is because I actually get a little bit, at the time, I got a little bit overwhelmed with, for example, when I was doing stage-based acting, there's a lot of rehearsal time, and then once you get into the performance, you're doing a performance every day, the same thing, sometimes twice a day. And it's great, but it can sometimes, for me, kill the passion and the excitement for a piece. It was only until I found actually the screen-based stuff that I realised I can still do the acting and not get overwhelmed, because there's something different every day, sort of thing. So there's that side of it. The second reason why I didn't study it at uni is because I wanted to get another option in terms of how I could pay my bills, because it's not uncommonly heard that actors don't always do anything. Like, they can not be successful at all, probably won't be able to pay their bills for a long time through acting alone. So I thought I'd get something else to do that. So I went and studied advertising and marketing, which is great. Learned a lot. Life-changing, actually. Really good. Gave me a perspective about lots of things which weren't acting. And also got me on the course, which meant that I met one of my first proper directors. So for that Through Emerald Eyes that I mentioned before. So and that's also how I met you, Alistair, as well. So if I hadn't done it, hadn't auditioned, hadn't gone to that drama site, there's lots of things which, if you hadn't done, you wouldn't be where you are. So it's a unique journey, but everyone's on that sort of uniqueness as well.
So what's your favourite part about acting?
Acting, favourite part. think it's the variety of it. I mean, it's probably like the only career where you can say, "Oh, what did you do today?" And every day can be something different. And if you're fortunate enough to be acting all the time, which I want to be, or as much as possible, then you can literally say, "Oh, today I was a policeman. Next week I might be an astronaut or a cowboy or whatever." There is all that. There's so much variety. But you're not just having fun. There is a lot of hard work to it, and you've realised that, like everything, you've got to put in the time and effort to get the best out of it. And I think it's probably a combination of that. So knowing that you've put in the effort and the time, but being able to have a really good fun as well. And for me, it's just sounds like an amazing amount of fun. A lot to it, but yeah.
So do you think that you'd never really wanted to do just one thing? Do you think that's part of the attraction to acting?
I think so. And I think it stems a little bit from my parents being self-employed as well. So it's definitely the variety, which is great, but also the fact that you're kind of working for yourself in a way. So you're doing lots of different things, but it's all always changing, always changing because you've put work in. So whatever you put in means that you can do more varied stuff. So there's always sort of a whole kind of cycle of doing lots to get a good outcome and a more varied outcome as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So through their being self-employed, it's a good way of sort of looking at it like that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be like one of the hardest things about that as well?
Oh, that's a topic that go on for a long time. I think one of the hardest things, and this is very much what you might find is the hardest things for most actors, is obviously location. So you're not always going to have the options where you're located. For example, if you're in the far north of Scotland or somewhere remote or wherever where there isn't an industry, chances are you're not going to find a lot which other people are providing. One of the ways that you counteract that, of course, is you make your own stuff. But if you're an actor, you don't always know how to make a film, or for example, or you don't always know how to get people together to put on a play. So it's more actually about the people that are around you, and you get more of that in certain cities.
I guess it's a common thing that you hear with actors about like moving to Hollywood kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I guess it's probably not solely about that you have to move to one of those big hubs. It's kind of that you just have to find people locally to you.
Yeah.
And if there's not loads, then obviously that location could be even bigger. But if you are very remote, but you just, I guess, have to find people somewhat close, and then social media and stuff like that can help.
Well, yeah, that's true, and this is why it's probably be really good to be an actor today in terms of options. So social media, you can film your own stuff and send it via social media or the internet. So that's one thing which has been made easier. There are problems with that, but overall I'd say it's probably a solution. There's loads of different ways to be seen. For example, it helps that we're in the UK, whereby London, Manchester, Birmingham, especially from where we are in the East Midlands, they're only like maybe 2 hours away max, certain circumstances. So you can get to the main hubs quite readily. In America, for example, Hollywood is completely on one side of a vast country to somewhere else. So there's probably easier here. It's probably easier here. But yeah, I find myself very lucky in the fact that I know you two fill in the skill sets which I don't have, so we can make stuff and I can then concentrate on my acting, but then also through you I've explored different avenues, for example, the producing stuff and things like that. So there's that benefit. So it's just sort of about being open to trying new things, but also trying to encourage things that are taking place near to you and just sort of finding those options. Like I did move to London earlier this year, and I thought, well, I'm spending so much money and time trying to live there that I'm not actually doing any of the acting. Back home in the East Midlands, I have that available. I can make projects, I can make things. So I'm quite lucky in that sense. Other people don't have that. So there is that struggle. That's not to say I won't ever go back. That's not to say I don't need to go back at some point. But you just got to look at what's around you and who you know and who knows you. And
I think that's something that we talk about a lot, about it not being the be all and end all, having to be in those kind of hubs.
Yeah. I don't think you need to be based somewhere to necessarily get the opportunities. You might maybe need to be there to maybe meet people who might give you the opportunities. But I imagine there's probably a threshold that once you're past that, it doesn't matter where you are, because we're because of the internet and social media now. The sort of perspective, time and distance between people is so small now. I could be up in Carlisle, and I could give you a FaceTime and be like, let's talk about a new film, and it would be as simple as that, as opposed to back once upon a time where everyone used to have to travel and meet face to face, and it would have been a very different setup. So I think perhaps it is. Would you say it's better now? From that point of view,
absolutely. That's not to say that auditions, face-to-face auditions, for example, don't still take place, the vast majority are going to be in London. So there's that. But the simple fact that you can live anywhere you want and still get into contact with people and still find people online, whatever. Like there's so many Facebook groups related to filmmaking things. You can still do that sort of thing. Of course, face-to-face is often the best way to do things, but there's more options than ever, so it's better now. It is better. So yeah, the future's always sort of looking bright for actors. Of course there's more to be concerned with. So
what advice then would you give to your fellow actors who are perhaps just at that point where they want to just break through, or maybe even not, maybe they're just it's just a dream in their eyes at this point, what would you say to them?
Well, actually, it's really interesting. First time the other day, an actor or somebody that wanted to be an actor came to me and asked me for advice.
Oh, nice.
And the difficult part is because I've gone to more screen, it's a little bit difficult for me to say what a stage actor must do, because actually all the things which I can do remotely, a stage actor probably needs to be in a location where there's big stages to perform on, for example. But what I would say in terms of advice for any actor is look at what's around you, realise what resources you have available, and explore them to the absolute max you can. You don't know what you might find, but guaranteed you will learn something about lots. And there is always going to be that case where your life experience will help you in a role which you get. So always be open to finding new things which are around you and experiencing those things and enjoying life and things like that. Be willing to try lots of different things. I learned a lot from just 3 months in London, and it's benefited me so much. So always be willing to explore different options. Look at the people that are around you. There are definitely a few sites you can get on to sort of get work as well. Mandy is one of them. Probably one of the best ones to start out with.
It is.
Things like that. So there's lots of like actual hard assistances which you can suggest, like Mandy for one. And of course, if anyone wants to sort of ask me more about sort of finding that sort of thing, then they absolutely can. They can contact me, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter as well, or through website as well. Usually Mark Wisdom Actor is a handle for most things, or www.markwisdomactor.co.uk. It's a mouthful. So if you want to ask specifically about finding those sorts of websites and things like that, absolutely. But yeah, in terms of advice, just keep your eyes open. You don't always know what's coming next. You don't know what's nearby, and always think about saying yes to something. If you think something's going to be good, but you're unsure, assuming it doesn't look dangerous or anything like that, just say yeah. You don't know what's going to happen. Like if I hadn't said yes to that first proper film that I did, which introduced me eventually to you, where would I be? Probably not acting. So you never know. You never quite know. Of course, take the caveat that I'm still on my journey myself, so there's still lots that I don't know. So, but I can only tell you my experience up to sort of a couple of years ago, where it was obviously very different, and I had no idea what I was doing. So there's always a few steps which everyone can help out someone that's a few years behind them, or a little bit of time behind them. So
I think, and I hope that with this podcast that we can show that we're not at the position where we definitely want to be, but we're heading towards that. And I think that's even more of a reason to for people to listen and see our experiences, because sometimes we might make a wrong move or something, and I think that's you want to be learning from people that are doing it rather than people that have made it. I think that's probably important.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I would say is be just a good person in general, as an actor, but also a filmmaker, anybody that wants to work with other people, because this is especially acting, filmmaking, it's very people driven. So if you're not a nice person, no one's really going to want to work with you. So
it will stick with you.
Exactly, and you'll form a reputation. And I've made mistakes, absolutely, in that regard. And there are people that I'm sure probably wouldn't want to work with me just because at the time I didn't read the situation well. And that is the situation. But if you can come out and saying either that you've learned from it and say that you won't do it again, and recognising that, and knowing that at the very least you thought you were being the best person you could be at the time, then that's what I think will get you places. Just being a good person to work with, because people are willing to sort of take you on board and give you the opportunity. I've found, or at least the ones which will give you that opportunity are the ones which you probably will learn from the most and get the most out of. So there is always that. Be the best person that you can be. Be the best collaborator that you can be. I would say, yeah, for sure. It's helped me.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
So every episode we talk about a film that you've been working on recently.
Yep.
So what is that film for you?
Well, I don't know. Not sure what I'm trying to talk about. Done a few recently.
Do you want to talk about one you've worked with us on, or one that you haven't?
Possibly one you haven't then. Okay, that'll be interesting. So the options are, for you guys, you can either talk about The After Party 2050, or World Source, or My Father's True Colours.
So we've seen two of those, I think.
There's Shadows as well. That was a student film I did earlier in the year. Take your pick. Take your pick.
The one that sounds most interesting to me is that After Party one.
Sure.
As much as we'd like to talk about World Source,
we would all. That's what we'll talk.
I think that's going to be a cult classic film. Just so you know.
One day. I've actually talked about this the least, so I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I barely know anything about it, so introduce it to me.
So The After Party 2050 is, and it's not released yet. It was filmed last October, and it is a.
Is it a short?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, but it's still in editing, so it could go for longer. But it's a sort of a conceptual dystopian kind of the films that we like the ones that you want to make, the sci-fi sort of elements of what could be set in 2050. Surprise, surprise. And the idea behind it is that what if your life, your career, your marriage was determined by the government? Everything. So you have until you graduated from high school, would be sort of like the overall term, like the high school stage. You graduated, you have 10 days to then explore and experiment and do whatever the hell you want. But after that, you're married to who you're assigned to. Your job is what you're assigned with for your life. I played in that a guy called Tom, who was a bit of a rebel, because it suits me entirely, which to a degree, yeah, no, it sort of fit, which is nice. Guy played Tom, who's very much resisting that side, that post 10-day side. Doesn't want to think about it. Wants to enjoy these 10 days, live it to the most. So does drugs, has a lot of sex and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Really relishes it and takes the most of that in. With results, obviously. He interacts with the protagonist in that film, and things happen.
So are you not the main character in it?
I would be the main antagonist, yeah.
Okay.
Main antagonist, which is probably what I prefer, actually. Not always being an antagonist, but someone that it could be a support or a character actor who their purpose in the film is very particular, has layers, has depth. You know, you can get a lot out of it. Lots of different ways you can play it. For example, I think that's why.
Would you opt for antagonist over protagonist then, if you had the choice?
It depends on how well written they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about then?
Because you could have.
Because it's nowadays it's very much into the categories of anti-heroes, isn't it? You get a lot of these kind of like grey area characters,
but they still have an obstacle to overcome, which would be the antagonist.
Yeah.
Of the piece. But that's what I was about to say before. Like, it is changing, or people do really appreciate that kind of anti-hero figure. It just depends. It really depends. But actors that I really admire aren't always the leading characters, or their career has changed so that they change with that. So they start out as a leading character and then develop more into antagonists or whatever. Yeah. There's some that do everything. Tom Hiddleston, for example. Yep. And although, definitely. Although they probably.
Has Tom Hiddleston
I don't think he's ever been a villain.
Done films other than Thor, then?
Yeah.
He's done more stuff.
Yes, he has.
Oh wow, this is amazing.
He did The Night Manager. That was really good.
That was really good. You should watch that.
I've not seen it. I've seen stuff about it.
It's good.
It's good. So good. It's so. Patrick Melrose. We've talked about this before. It's not as mainstream. Of course, it is on Sky and it's promoted and everything like that. But for me, that short series, what it does for Benedict Cumberbatch and shows his range to a wide audience, I think The Night Manager did for Tom Hiddleston. Everyone knows he's brilliantly funny as Loki. Everyone knows that. But before that, he did a lot of Shakespeare in The Hollow Crown. Maybe people didn't quite know him then. He wasn't as big, but now you can really see how talented he is. Yeah. Same with Richard Madden as well. So people know him from Game of Thrones, but what else beyond that? Until he did that, and you see really, God, this guy's amazing. So what were we talking about?
Well, I was gonna
like types and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because from our point of view, we need to be familiar with like the whole film, or we're working on the whole film from start to finish.
Yeah.
How does it differ for an actor if you're I'm guessing you're not in every single scene?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It varies, and a lot of it depends on the team that you have working with you, and how much interaction you have with the director, for example. And everyone is different. There are a few things which, for example, if you get into doing a lot of TV work, you can often come in for a day, and they will expect you to give your performance on that day, and then that's it, you're done. Of course, when you get to helming projects and being the lead in projects or being a significant part of it, then it's obviously helpful to you to know how the story progresses.
But generally, most actors in stuff, I guess, are never going to be in every single scene.
True, and that I would say on the whole, it would be good to have a overall picture of the story and things like that, so you can work on the characterization. So if you know where your character ends up, you've got to realise what are the sort of seeds which mean that they can get there, and you can work them into sort of the scenes that you are in throughout.
Yeah.
Is that sort of what you mean? Because obviously there's...
Yeah, I was just curious to how that feels, because we're involved in like every scene regardless of actor.
True.
So I just thought that was interesting for like for you could go a day where other scenes are being filmed that you're not a part of, and
I mean,
but you still need to be in the film just as much as
it's good
us, really.
It's useful to have an awareness of things. It's useful. I would say often when you don't know what's been taking place, it's always just good to be surprised when you see it all come together.
Yeah.
If you're aware of scenes, of course, then you can use them in your performance that you're not involved with. You can use it in your performance. Sometimes it's good not to know. So it, as in real life, if your character isn't there at the time, then they're sort of blind to that side of things. In a practical sense, sometimes it's good, and some actors do actually still go to the studio regardless of whether they're in that scene for the day. For example, if it's getting the reverse of a close-up, the reverse close-up in a scene, sometimes they'll still go and give the reverse performance. So some actors do like to be involved as much as they can in that sense, but it is a weird thing sometimes to not know anything about one project that you've worked on for so long, because it's been like on Game of Thrones. There's people that never met because they're working in different countries for 8 seasons or whatever. So it's a weird thing, and there's no real way to sort of relate to it, I suppose, because you guys are working all the time during it. But I suppose I don't know, maybe there's more time in pre-production in certain circumstances with that, so there's more done then for actors, depending on how it works, how it's going to pan out with the director and things like that.
And then obviously your job is done when the cameras stop rolling most of the time, unless there's any ADR or something. True. But so then you also, how much do you feel that you kind of leave your performance in the hands of like the editor afterwards, and like, because you can feel like it's great and then
they change it.
It's subject to editing.
Yeah. Well, of course, eventually you have to leave it in the hands of someone else. The director, for me, it's like, just say, as long as the director's happy, I'm happy. If they're happy, then I can trust that in their head they know that the big picture, whatever you've done, fits in. So the editing process will work with your performance. I personally am never quite happy with something, but if I can sense that something feels good and that it was sort of the best that I could give at the time, and then I'm sort of satisfied. But as long as the director's happy, I'm okay to leave something be and move on to the next thing. Yeah. I think I've actually learned the most about my own way of doing things when you can sense that the director isn't quite satisfied, but maybe you have to move on through time constraints. I've definitely remembered those moments and been like, okay, so how can you be more flexible with things? And then you try and work that into how you do things, and then it will help the next project that you work on. But yeah, if the director seems happy, should be good. Should be good.
So, what were there any challenging parts of that film?
For the afterplay? Yes. Performance-wise, so I've working with, for example, you as a director, I've become very used to having lots of communication in pre-production. Now, it's not to say that we didn't have a lot of communication, but it was certainly less than what I'm used to. So for me personally, the challenge was how to develop a character and trust that what you're doing will be right for the director at the time. Especially with shorter films where there's usually a big theme or a particular point which you're trying to make during the film. If your characterization doesn't hit that theme or point, you've missed something, and then you might feel separate to the overall goal. Of course that applies elsewhere, but sometimes, when you're on TV and you're playing the dad of the murder victim or whatever, and you're there for like 5 minutes, you just have to play a convincing dad. Fine. But in a short film you have to realise that there's probably going to be some kind of condensed idea. So if I don't have contact with the director, I then have to trust myself to hit that and understand. And at the time I was living in the East Midlands and the film was in London, and the only way I could contact with the director was either through emails or maybe social media or something. And it's not always easy to understand the message which comes through. So there was that challenge, for sure. And I think you just have to try your best, really. Make the most out of any rehearsals that you do have. Hopefully at the time, on the day, you will have prepared enough that you're flexible if the director wants something different. Yeah, that's the sort of work that we have to do, and I think that definitely came to a head in that project.
Following on from that, then, what would... learning from the challenges you faced there, how would you use those experiences to perhaps, what would you do differently if you're doing it again, or if it was for a different project?
That particular film?
Yeah.
I would say I actually was quite happy with how I approached that film, but what I would say I learned is because it was one of my first time doing it like that for another short film, not related to how I've done it before. What I tried was to do as much work as I could, and then just almost ask the director as much as I could if I was on the right lines. So I tried that approach and it seemed to work. So what I learnt, I would say, was that kind of worked, and to probably do it again. What I would possibly say the biggest lesson was to do as much work as you can, know your lines and everything like that, and just practice with lots of different emotions and options, and then that way, if the director's not communicating with you, for example, in a worst case scenario where you have no communication in a conceptualized film, just have the weapons in your arsenal, if you like. Have as much as you can possibly have personally, and you've done your job the best you can do. It is a team-based thing anyway, so I think that's what I would say is just, and what I learned from that film was that I did more preparation than I would probably do individually, and it paid off to a degree, and it seemed to work at the time. But I haven't seen the performance yet, and I don't know if I would want to. So I don't know whether if she seemed happy, like the director at the time seemed happy, so that's good enough for me. It's always a case of uncertainty, I think.
Yeah.
Whether it works. So
what about this then? So, say for example, you're working on a film and you have the choice between the director. So for all your fellow actors out there, so you've got the director who tells you exactly everything they want to see you do.
Okay.
From facial expressions to movements to the way you say your lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an extreme, and I know
Yeah.
everyone sits on the spectrum, but
There
if
are
we have
directors like that, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
that one
Yeah.
to the one who completely kind of says, I'd like you to interpret the script in your own
However
way.
you want.
Yeah. Which is favourable? I mean, you
If
can.
I had to choose one of those options.
Yeah. We'll say that, but then we'll say which you'd favour
towards.
over.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would rather have freedom.
Have freedom.
That would go there because,
Yeah.
and it works slightly for different actors, but I think, for me personally, I work with maybe like flow and immersing myself in the scenario, and if something doesn't feel right, if I'm being given a direction which doesn't feel right, it's really hard sometimes to incorporate that into the characterization that you've done. It goes back to being flexible. But if somebody's really asking you to raise your eyebrow at a certain stage or something like that, or to have a particular teardrop falling at a certain time, God, that's pressure. And you need to be the best performances come when you're relaxed. And I'm not saying that the best, things can't work like that. Some films have been done like that where it's been quite specific.
Yep.
But whatever can be done to keep the actors relaxed usually pays off, or at least it does for me. But I think it helps to have done the pre-production work in rehearsals in order to do that. So you know your lines like the back of your hand. You don't have to worry about that. Roughly what kind of blocking you're going to do, what kind of actions you're going to do. If that's all comfortable, you can usually work with a director and sort of, if they want you to move an arm at a certain time, you can usually do it. But I would edge towards being a bit freer, I suppose. So you can explore a scene and get the most out of it. Of course, time constraints and just getting away,
of course.
that's sort of what I lean towards. Yeah, for sure. It doesn't always work.
No, of course.
It doesn't always work. Yeah.
Shall we move on to some questions to get to know you a bit more?
Okay.
So, how do you like to relax?
A few different ways, I suppose. Gaming is good. Like a bit of gaming. Don't do it as much now. Actually, I think it's the same thing. Once you get started in this, if you're really committed, you never switch off. So it's like whenever I play a video game or whatever. So I was like, well, should I be doing this or should I be doing something productive? Yeah. So there's that. What I really like to do is paint. A little bit of painting. Good. Particularly like Warhammer and stuff. It's nerdy. It really is. But it's
character defining.
Well, thank you. I think it's one of those things like I did it as a kid, and then a lot of people drop off. But there's so much you can get out of it, and there's so much social you can get out of it as well. You can find friends through it and things like that, and it's quite relaxing to just be there painting. It's like so chill, and you can listen to podcasts like the White Deer podcast whilst you're doing it. Listen to podcasts, audiobooks, things like that. It's a good way to allow for other things to come into your life as well, so you can multitask in that sense and do it. And it's another skill. Yeah, really like that. And if you want to follow my painting work, on Instagram, it's Studio Culverin. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
All right.
That's it, mainly.
What about what's the weirdest thing about you?
Okay. The weirdest thing is, so I have an odd obsession with Andy Murray, Sir Andy Murray. So you should be in it. Yeah.
What kind of obsession?
It's all clean now. It's all PC. I just really like. I follow his career quite religiously, and just like it's almost like a joke amongst some of my friends, like especially my previous girlfriend. She always used to say, "Oh, is Andy on TV today?" oh, that's it, I'm not going to get to speak to you for a while. Oh, why don't you go marry him? Things like that. It's just like, because if he was playing, I'd watch. And I watched him play at like 3 o'clock in the morning, because he was playing, I would actually change my sleep patterns to watch him play. Yeah, it like you're learning something new.
Interesting.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah, no. There's been a couple of times where it's, for example, the US Open or the Australian Open, and it would have been like the final or a semi-final's been played at midnight, starts at midnight or 1 o'clock. I would go to bed. I'd come in from work. I'd go to bed at maybe 6 p.m. Have a bit of sleep, get up for the match, watch the match, and then go back to bed. But the trouble with tennis is that it's not defined as to when it will finish. Yeah. So it can go on for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. So the remainder of sleep that you get is, you can't predict it. So I think there's one occasion where I got up at I think 3 o'clock to watch a match, and some sort of time, stupid o'clock in the morning, and the match went on and on and on until I actually had to go to work the next day and leave it. Yeah. But I enjoy it. I think he's a really good. He's an inspiration in many ways. And all tennis players are. It's changing the subject completely. But particularly him, I just think like he got me into tennis watching it. I can't play at all. I can't play, but I think it's like it's good to it's sort of similar in a way to an actor. So an actor, a tennis player has to do so much work to then on the day give it their all, and I think he works really hard. Like the guy's had major surgery and wants to come back. It's inspiring. There we go. Something new.
Nice.
Don't think you knew that.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, what are you not very good at?
Oh, lots. Lots of things. This is why I really hope this works out, because anything else, I'm just rubbish.
I think that's similar with a lot of creative people, like
really
fairly unemployable in every other way.
I know. Well,
You've got a good degree though.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to
Actually,
do it.
so do you. It's just me.
Oh, I don't know. You can't do much with international relations, really.
Oh, can't you?
No.
It sounds good, though.
Well, it sounds good. It sounds
It's an
good,
international film festival, and you're going to build relationships.
True. Yes.
Didn't think of that.
No.
In fact, we're relying on you now to bring in
the international community.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yeah. Got it.
But definitely maths. No.
Does it
second that?
Yeah.
Does it improve to you if you put a pound sign in front of it? That's a bit easier to do maths then, isn't it? It has just a purpose to it.
Yeah, for sure. But I think probably leading on from that is doing a lot of projects which actually it's not always clear as to what the benefit you're going to get from them. So I'm in the point of my career now where I should be looking for things that pay relatively well. It's difficult for an actor, of course it is. That's why I'm trying to diversify and do a bit more production, a bit more writing to add to the wage packet, if you like. But yeah, doing a few things which I maybe probably should say no to because it's going to take up so much time, but you learn from everything. So, but yeah, definitely maths. I'm really bad at maths. Really bad at maths.
Yeah,
so
definitely
bad.
Get that.
So bad. Mental maths as well.
Yeah.
You know, if I went back and did my SATs, my main tests,
that'd
be terrible.
I don't know. It might not be as bad as you think. Well, what about 7/8?
56.
There you go.
Yeah, but 5, 6, 7, 8. That's easy.
Okay. Right. Oh, so you're talking like if we're doing like 132 times.
Yeah, but to be fair, I don't really think many people will know.
No, I know. Yeah.
And if you do, you probably should be a mathematician.
Yeah.
Or something in that field. But that, I guess, and I suppose maybe get too hooked on one thing at one time. So I'd say I'm an alright multitasker, but I like to devote a lot at one stage,
Yeah.
and I'll push aside other things. So socially, I might lose out on seeing people and things like that. But I think that's probably what most people go through anyway, because it's a very, I mean, especially when you work freelance, it's difficult to keep up the balance between. Not been doing my vocal exercises. Balance between like social life and things like that. But it's, yes, I think everyone goes through that, but it's maths.
So, can you tell us about any future projects you're working on that you can share with us?
I can. The main one right now is a project called Conviction Without Remorse. We always shorten that to CWR. But it is a short film which I think is going to go and do quite well. It's about a sort of loophole in the justice system which came about we're setting it in the 70s, probably could have been done before, but essentially in the 1970s the security in prisons or courthouse cells was lax enough that it's feasible that with a few careful choices a prisoner could just walk out the prison because the checks weren't there, cameras weren't, CCTV wasn't there. It is a feasible thing that this could happen, and it's sort of playing around with the what if and how do you get there, and just looking at that idea whilst being grounded in good characterization, good characters and story. We hope. We say that I co-wrote it with you, so it might be rubbish. But we hope we both like the concept. I think we both like what we've done with it, and it's gonna really challenge us in many ways. Like producing for me, it's a big one. Acting wise, it's gonna challenge. I think working with a few other actors that I've never worked before, it's always a challenge, but it's always a pleasure when you build a good relationship with them. It's going to be that.
What role are you playing in Conviction?
I'm playing the Junior Barrister. We never find out his true name. Somewhat intentionally, I would say. And he is the guy that... so, in the very opening of the film, the lead character is Dominic Farrier is sentenced to life in prison. And then he is taken down to the waiting cell where he's waiting to be transported to prison for the rest of his life. However, he calls on his junior barrister, so his barrister's assistant, who in those times it was quite readily accepted that the junior barrister would do a lot of the legwork, speak to prisoners. One of the fun facts we found out when we were doing the research is that the barrister would sometimes send in the junior barrister if they were a bit scared of the prisoner. They would just send in the other person because they didn't want to get hit or something. Yeah. So it was interesting, and it obviously helps me because I'm not that old yet, and I don't look that old yet, so I can't play a barrister as such, so it's helped. But yeah, he's the guy that has the conversation with Dominic Farrier, the sentenced prisoner, who lets on that the case might not be as clear-cut as first thought, and through their conversations we find out that maybe it isn't, maybe there's something more to this. I'm
assuming that's as much as you can say without giving spoilers.
pretty much, but it's kind of...
Or else we just won't make it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just tell you now. But it is actually, based on the times that we're setting it as well, it's a good look at the dynamics between an educated person, the junior barrister, and also Dominic Farrier, who is from a more traditional working class background. So there's that dynamic as well. This plays, we could say that for sure. Like that definitely comes into it and is explored. There's a few things we're exploring, but we think it's going to do quite well. We hope it does. All faith.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So that will hopefully be done by this time next year, and at festivals, I guess.
You hope so.
So is there do you have any other goals to achieve by kind of this time next year?
Career-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've recently signed on with an agent. So by this time next year, I would love to have a really good working relationship with them, as a priority, and so that they can understand me and what sort of my goals are for things. But also, I'd like to do more feature films, and I'd like to work with a lot more, with a wider variety of directors, because I'm saying this from a very particular experience pool. There's guaranteed to be many different ways of working, and there are, obviously there are. So I'd love to work with as many directors as possible, just to learn, share, collaborate, do a lot. In particular, I think a couple more features would be good. More feature films, taking what I've done with a few characterizations, and then broadening it out more, so I get more experience with that. That'd be really, really useful, because keeping the character believable throughout a more extended period of time is always useful, always trains you. But then building in a bigger flow of their arc, for example, that would be really helpful. More features.
Mm-hmm. And finally, what would you like to achieve in your sort of personal life outside of career?
I'd like to, and it's going to sound really sad, make more friends.
Well, maybe nothing wrong with that.
No. Well, I think a lot of this career is based around working on yourself a lot. And you do collaborate with a lot of people, but there are times when you're so busy auditioning for things and travelling and working on projects and whatever, and writing and doing things which take up a lot of time, and you don't stick in a 9-to-5 pattern always. You do work all the time, all day.
Yeah.
And I've let a lot of my previous social options go. If that makes sense. Yeah. So just like to sort of let it, be able to let it go a little bit, maybe focus on things a bit more, so I can delegate my time better, I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose that, I know it sounds really sad, but also maybe travel more, like you've suggested. See more things, broaden my horizon.
Cliche, but very valid.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Why not enjoy life whilst you've got one?
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting when you hang around with people who don't know or do anything to do with film, and you can have a conversation, like spend a whole night talking to them, where they don't know a thing, and they don't ask you because they don't care how films are made or anything. And it's kind of quite because I think sometimes we have, like, when we introduce ourselves as having a job like what we do, it's kind of exciting to some people.
I know.
Then if someone doesn't ask you about it, it's kind of like, right, we're just talking about random stuff all night that isn't what I think about all day. So it's kind of quite nice.
But you've always got like odd bits of trivia. So like everyone loves films, or most people love films anyway. But everyone sort of can talk about films. But maybe you've got like a little bit of, I know how they did that and things like that. So it's one of those good careers where you can transpose it really well into real life. But yeah, most people feel, I found that it's really exciting. You're a filmmaker. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
When you're gonna roll the red carpet out and things like that. When you're breaking in the billions and things like that. So that's one of those things. Yeah, it's nice to have a break.
I guess just to end, do you want to say goodbye and give us a bit of a teaser as to the future of the podcast?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for watching, listening. If you're listening on the podcast, that makes up our 3 interviews. So hopefully you've got to know us a bit better. Of course, if you want to know more, we're always available on social media, through emails as well. We'll put links in the relevant places for you to be able to contact us. But of course, if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, subscribe. If you think we could do something better, or if you just want to sort of say what you did like, leave a comment. You can do that on social media as well. We'd love to hear it. The future of the podcast will now change slightly. So obviously we're together. We live quite locally and quite close to each other. We would hope that people from all across the world will get in touch with us and want to be on our podcast. So we're not expecting people to fly to the UK to do that. So if you want to be on our podcast in the future, we will sort out some sort of way of communicating, either via Skype or another kind of video-based service and something like that. Probably Skype. And we will do roughly what we've been doing now, but just obviously from where you are, where we are, and hopefully it'll go okay. But thank you very much for listening to me and to us do these first few interviews. Yeah, no, we'll keep them coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.